Okay, so you do the Picard, the Picard.
Yeah.
You are the Picard, the Picard.
I am the Picard.
You are sort of the, well, you know.
Yes.
I'm attracted to bald men. Yeah, we just watched it. I watched it. Well, I watched it last night, courtesy of my neighbor who had CBS All Access. Hooked me up.
Thank you for somebody for paying for it, and you weren't like going on the internet and trying to find some illegal copy. You know, please, people pay for it in some way, or at least find someone to leech off. Somebody should pay for it. Damn it!
Somebody should leech off, like we leech off our friends with Netflix accounts too.
Possibly, yeah.
Of which, you know, some people do leech off of mine. Friends, I mean neighbors, close by, you know, so that when the feds come in their vans...
You know, it depends on what you pay for, but I have, like, the premium so I can watch their stuff, like, 4K, and so...
This is one of the things I actually wrote up in my review, which won't be going up for 2 weeks, but in my review I said that, do you remember that our generation is the generation that didn't have to pay for Star Trek? It was like being... you know, piped into our homes free of charge.
Well, you know, actually...
And it was the best Star Trek, too, on top of that.
I feel like we need to talk to our brother from another mother, Chris Cooling, because he's like, he's in Texas. I think he's always kind of been in that area. I get the feeling he had to pick it up on some UHF station in the middle of nowhere, and probably was very snowy when he watched it.
Well, he did, and then for some time I had to, like when the show first started, when Next Generation first started, I had to watch it on Channel 29, which was a UHF channel in Philadelphia.
We had cable, and it was actually on a local. It was on 13.
Well, when we moved up to New York, I got it on Channel 11, and the reception was much better in New York than it was in Philly.
Yeah.
But it was the best entertainment.
Was it?
It really was. Because it was Next Generation, it was Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and the rest. But now you have to pay for this stuff. For some reason, I really honestly can't figure it out, because if you're trying to lure in the younger audience, which is what I suspect they are trying to do by putting them on these new services, and I was also mentioning, I don't know if I was talking to my daughter about this on our podcast or something, but I think that more people are looking at streaming entertainment and going to places like YouTube than looking at their TVs, because they don't want to be bothered with network schedules. They want to make their own schedule, which is, you know, after it premieres, you can see it anytime you want, you know, on the streaming service, and you can watch anything now. And
well, yeah, I mean, it went up. Actually, you know, technically, it went up like at 12:01 a.m. Pacific, which had been 3 a.m. Eastern.
Yeah.
On like Wednesday into Thursday.
Let me bring up my
notes.
I
waited. I was like, no, I want to sit down and properly watch it. But by the time I got to it, which was actually Friday, it was like all these, you know, because your news always seems to be customized. So I got hit with some of the spoilers, but as like I knew what was generally going to happen. I knew Data was going to be in it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like the trailer kind of spoils a few things for the entire series, because you see Data. They still give
you some surprises. I got some surprises. I mean,
and you see the girl, and then, you know, Red Letter Media kind of like put together a couple of ideas because of that. And then you see Jerry Ryan, and then, you know, I mean, like later, Frakes and Marina Sirtis said they weren't involved in the show. It turns out they are. They appear in at least one episode. Now we're hearing Michael Dorn isn't going to be on it. They don't want to show Klingons, but then I have a feeling we're going to see him at some point. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff I was writing up as I was watching it, and only a little bit of what I wrote up wound up in my article. My article was mainly kind of about it does capsulize the story a little bit, but mainly it's kind of about how Patrick Stewart is not Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise. Captain Jean-Luc Picard is a work of fiction, a work of deception. He's
a changed man.
He was created by Gene Roddenberry in 1986. He's like James Kirk. He's Roddenberry's hero, his mirror image. And I talk about the auditioning of the.
Have you seen any of those interviews where he talks about he's basically, you know, where you go on these junkets and you tell the same story over and over again, and he talks about how Gene Roddenberry did not like him.
He didn't like him just because he didn't like bald. He said
did not want him, and of course, you know, by this time Gene Roddenberry was basically just a name they could slap on. They didn't give him a ton of power, and you know, it's slowly what little power he had would be taken away because he was kind of a douche. and that's when the show got good.
He was a big drug user, and he was a heavy drinker, and he had to go into rehab 500 times before they even started shooting Next Generation. But he got like this big, enormous package from Paramount, and
he gave Majel Barrett his package.
The thing, it was Robert Justman who championed for Patrick Stewart. Roddenberry wanted he wanted Patrick Bauschow, who's a really great actor. He was featured mainly on that show Carnival on HBO. He's a great actor, but he's creepy. He's too creepy to play the part.
He would have been an interesting. He would have been more sort of. He honestly he would have been more in that sort of in that area of who also got fired, Genevieve Bujold from Voyager, for some reason. I just imagine like it's in that sort of.
Well, I mean, like he was a lot more intelligible than Genevieve. I mean, I've seen the stuff true. With Genevieve Bujold. I couldn't understand a word she was saying half the time.
That's why they said. Well, that's why they canned her.
Yeah, and she couldn't really like deal with the multiple takes. She's like more. She came from a more, I guess, just filmmaking, like, taking your
Somebody
time.
get me Mrs. Columbo.
Mrs. Columbo. It's I wasn't disappointed by this pilot, in so much as I was disappointed with the Discovery pilot because I knew it was going to be better than Discovery, and I figured out why. It's because the show really does rely a lot on Patrick Stewart. This is his show, and he is one of these actors. He's wonderful too, by the way, in the show.
He is.
He's one of these actors who can really carry the cast, and he's dealing with a lot of people I've never seen before, with very little experience, and he's able to lift them to his level.
See, they
except for the girl, the young lady, I don't think she's that great. She's kind of boring a little bit.
What I like about it is they ease you into the new story. I mean, they start off with blue skies. Say what you will about Nemesis.
Yeah, and that very nice CGI model of the Enterprise.
Blue skies. Then he's having a vision of Data, and they kind of did a thing with Data where they de-aged him just a little bit to sort of the Nemesis level of his age.
They did correct him. They did correct him, if you remember from the.
Although he had more hair, he had like that wig. It's like helmet.
They did something to his cheeks. They kind of made him look like he wasn't holding his breath anymore.
Yeah, but they did just enough. They didn't.
But I really didn't like the eyes. The eyes didn't.
They were always futzing with Data anyway, so it was okay. And then they go in and it's like a dream thing. And this is what I liked about it. Unlike what they did with Star Wars, and we can beat Star Wars to death, this felt like the perfect combination of old, like you remember this, remember you remember everything that happened, everything is canon. They reference it kind of like references some of the stuff that happens in the 2009 Star Trek. Because that's what starts the new timeline when Romulus is destroyed by a supernova, and then everything in this timeline is like the aftermath of that. But by this time, there's no Spock because he went in a thing and he's gone. He's went into that alternate. He created an alternate timeline, so no more Spock. The Romulans are very thankful to Picard for what he did, which we only know a little bit of, where he helped them get out, but then there's
it requires, I guess, that you watch a little bit that short Trek episode, Children of Mars, which I did not see, but I understood it enough.
But honestly, it was a couple of girls fighting, and then it was like they hate each other, but then everybody gets kind of blown up at the end, and then they end on that like the way overused now sort of cover of Heroes. I can't even remember what band does it. Well, it's like a recent cover of Heroes. It's been overused.
Is it the one from Godzilla, the Wallflowers?
Possibly.
The one that goes, "We could be heroes."
Yeah, no, it's an even later one.
Or is it the Peter Gabriel one?
It's like,
I think that might be Peter Gabriel, and they used it on Stranger Things.
Yeah, that was probably the one they used. Yeah.
Even though that cover of Heroes came out a few years after the action of that episode, so. What I was thinking was, the writers did not do any research, and I think the writers didn't really know much about Star Trek anyway, and looked at like the top 10 episodes of Next Generation and worked it around.
Okay, yeah, it did feel like a greatest hits.
Yeah, like Measure of a Man. I mean, Bruce Maddox and all that. Bruce Maddox is the devil in this episode or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, like he wanted to make Data property, and here he is cloning androids and things like that. All of that is fine, actually. Everything kind of worked really well for me, except that a lot of it did feel derivative of other things. I was thinking about Alien, and I was thinking about Blade Runner. She doesn't know she's an android. We've got acid-spitting blood thing, kind of a thing going on, whatever that was. I couldn't really put her head or tail to that.
That was what's cool. It was like they gave you some surprises. Well, they only killed her, but then they didn't.
And she's the one who said, "You're the one I feel safest with," and then she's dead. And then there's another one, and the other one is like...
One of the things...
Very few things in the story, but... It stretched it out, so it kind of slowed it down a little bit.
I was a little confused, but then I realized okay, everything is beaming now, so it's like he's in France. Which, by the way, that first shot of like Chateau Picard, I'm like, oh, thank you. I needed this.
That's another. They should have called it Le Bar, not Chateau Picard. Chateau Picard doesn't get its own town.
Poo poo. And
Sorry,
he's
that's
there.
the fan guy in me. I'm like the one going, actually, it's Le Bar, not Chateau Picard. That's the name of the wine.
Will they get to the part of he has that disease that, I mean, like Q showed him the future where he had like some sort of disease?
Yeah, what's it? I want to call it Irazine syndrome, but it might be something. Yeah,
it's something. He has some sort of like degenerative
brain disease. We've got to save humanity.
Yeah. Could it have been? Could this whole thing be something that's invented in his head?
Oh God, that would be like a Sopranos type thing, like a big middle finger to the audience if it turned out to be a dream.
Fuck you.
But it wasn't. I mean, like in my notes, I'm writing about. Oh, the photography was fantastic. Especially they use like natural daylight photography, and it looks actually good.
This is something they started to do on Discovery last year, where the
cinematography much better than Discovery too, because it isn't all handheld and everything.
They kind of decided to do sort of a 2.4 Panavision ratio, even though they don't really need to. They probably shoot it in 16:9, but they decide to sort of letterbox it, so you've always got that sort of cinematic look to it.
Yeah.
They did that on Discovery too. Like the first season Discovery was 16:9, then after that it was like 2.4.
Now he's speaking that obscure language, according to data, called French to his dog, whose name is Number One.
Yeah, I think that's his dog, isn't it?
No, he only had his dog for like 5 days before it died. Patrick Stewart is not very good with animals. I'm sorry, but I had to say it.
Or daughters, I guess.
He adopted this dog. It was dead 5 days later. I'm like, what? I mean, like, what we try to do is feed them, make sure they're healthy, take them to the doctor, get them their shots and all that stuff.
It's complicated.
But no, that other dog, I don't think that was his. You're not going to get a dog that's at death's door. You need like 4 or 5 different kinds of pit bulls to be playing Number One there.
I gotta say, I liked, it's like that. There's a kind of a big action sequence. Oh, this is something I didn't get to. They like somehow he's always like he's in France, then he's like in San Francisco, and I realized, how does he get there fast? And then I thought, wait a minute, this is beaming. Everybody just sort of beams in.
Everybody beams.
Like,
yeah.
And so it's almost like taking a bus.
Yeah,
it's like you go to the bus stop.
I forgot what I was looking at. Nerdrotic it was, and he's complaining about the editing and how jarring it is. Different locations keep happening and popping in. And I was like, it is transporter. You have to get into the mindset of the transporter. Just consider it a really, really fast car. That's all.
Did not they have like a shot of people like beaming in and beaming out, kind of like on the 4A or something?
Yeah.
Okay, well then that explains it. That explains it for me.
And she just shows up. You can just show up. You can just pop. You can do the pop in.
Yeah,
like from Seinfeld.
Do the pop in. I think that like I liked that there was like this big action sequence starts, and then he's old, so he has to he starts walking up the stairs about halfway through. He's like, I like that.
He's just old. He's just really old.
And that happens.
But I mean, it still works because he's still this commanding presence, and that's why this show works, because we have him. We had nobody on Discovery. It was all a bunch of strangers. You're starting from scratch. You're starting from zero, and none of these people, and you have to take your time and introduce them. And that's one of Discovery's problems, because we never get to know anybody on that show except for Michael Burnham.
I would say he's a little more agitated Picard, because younger Picard would not have lost his cool when being interviewed. You know what I mean? Like he's being interviewed.
Well, the expositional interview where he's like part of some.
It's a trap.
He's part of some kind of 2020 expose on Starfleet television.
He should have known. Like, I'm going to be interviewed. They're going to ask me some.
Now, do you think you have to pay for Starfleet television service, like $10.99 a month without commercials?
Actually, no. Isn't that kind of a government? It'd be like PBS or something.
You would think, but even maybe in the future, you still have to pay for PBS.
There's no money, remember?
Yes, that's what I've been told so many times. But if, like Nog said in that Deep Space Nine episode, well, if you have no need for money, then you don't need any of mine. When Jake tries to borrow money from him so he can buy a baseball card for his dad.
Mm-hmm. I also liked that, again, it goes back to Nemesis of like they have B4. And he talks about how.
So I mean, but that means that it is canon. I mean, this whole thing is canon.
It's all canon.
But I keep seeing all these other angry. it's weird because Star Trek: The Original and Only Timeline Facebook group accepts the show, and they're going to let you talk about it because they consider it canon. They don't accept Discovery though, even though Discovery is connected to Picard.
Suck a dick. I don't care.
But a lot of people get really angry about that. I don't like it. I don't like that level of fandom where it gets really ugly and you start calling people names.
It always gets ugly. It always gets to names. Everybody's pissed off.
But I had to leave. I chose to leave one of these sites because it turned into this Picard fan site. But it turned into this Picard fan site, and they would not accept any criticism of the show. Even before it was aired, I said I wasn't particularly enthusiastic about the show. And
well, I mean,
they took this as some kind of a condoning piracy or something, because they're like, no, you better not be looking at this on a pirated service or something like that.
Well, you should. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there are
but if I'm not particularly
society
enthusiastic
functions
about
on
it.
rules, and when you start breaking the rules and fudging things.
But I was getting into open arguments with the administrators. Several people messaged me in private and said, "I just want you to know, Dave, I agree with you. Their attitude is they're a little bit fascistic about this, and it seems like they're acting like unpaid employees of CBS All Access." So a bunch of people also quit in revulsion.
It might be. I mean, everybody's, well,
they put a lot of money behind this. They obviously did, but
they did.
It does at least this story, the way it begins in this first episode, is enough to carry it, at least for the first season, maybe even throughout the whole thing.
They hit all the bases for me, and then especially, I mean, they give you all the Nemesis stuff. They give you flashbacks to other shows. They even show, like, I'm hoping Q shows up at some point, because, man, then I really jizz myself. I think that, like, and then they end on
How
board.
are they going to show Q, though? He has aged. The actor has visibly aged,
They brought back Data.
Yeah, they kind of did. I mean, but it didn't look like our Data. It didn't look like... It looked like they... You know what it looked like? It looked like they put Brent Spiner in heavy Data makeup and then corrected him with the computer. That's what it kind of looked like to me.
What can they do? I mean, at least he doesn't. I mean, look, I love Jonathan Frakes, but he didn't completely go to hell like Jonathan Frakes did.
Well, Frakes, God,
we love him though. We love him.
Frakes has, like, the biggest issue for Frakes, other than his aging, at the time of the show, was his weight. He always gained weight and then lost it, and then gained it again and then lost it. It was an okay show. I'm not going to say it was great. I'm going to say that I enjoyed it. It was enjoyable. It looked really good.
I will say this though, it's in the mid 90s on Rotten Tomatoes, if you believe Rotten Tomatoes, but like it's got like some 50 some reviews of like various. I kind of pick and choose of what reviews I would believe, but I check the reviews after.
Right.
And I'm like, it's got general consensus is that it's really good, but you have to understand it's fan service, but in the best possible way. And again, I say this, it's like it's better than what they did with Star Wars. They advance the story, but then they start some new things, and that's what I liked about it.
Yeah, I would have to say the same. There are a couple of problems, though. I mean, some of the problems are kind of the fan service problems with the Picard playing poker with Data doesn't make sense to me, because Picard never played poker. He played poker in one episode, in the final episode.
He did at the end. That was what was brilliant. It's like
that was the final episode, but he was like, I should have done this a long time ago. And yeah, he should have, but he's not a poker guy. Picard is the kind of guy who likes to drink an Earl Grey while reading Shakespeare quietly alone in his quarters.
They whip out the Earl Grey too. They whip out everything.
Well, with the decaf, though. You can't have caffeine anymore. And then the second, the other thing was, the painting, right? So Data did this painting.
Yeah,
that painting looks nothing like Data's style. If you look at Data's paintings, he doesn't really paint like that. And also, a weird little secret about Data, I mean, Data's been ordered never to reveal certain information, but this is like a voluntary choice, whatever this is. I don't really understand that.
Could this tie into the whole Kelvin timeline, alternate datas from different pasts, and him painting it and then showing up?
Then you're getting into time travel theory, and I'm thinking anything that involves that timeline isn't going to show up in this timeline because nobody knows about it, right?
That's right. And although now that everything is under one umbrella now, they can pick and choose if they want to use some of that Kelvin timeline stuff. Although
they could have done that anyway. I mean, Discovery had references to the cage, remember?
Oh.
The actual original pilot, and they connected the two of them.
Now, I want to also say, like, that whole thing where he went on The View and talked to Whoopi and he asked her to come in for season 2. I feel that was a tad manufactured, but I don't care. Bring her back.
Well, my only problem with that, I've always liked the Guinan character, even though she doesn't really do much. She just provides like kind of wise commentary. What are you going to do with her in this show? Is she going to be sitting there with a goofy hat?
And be Whoopi. That's all you need.
I mean, they kind of changed some attitudes there. I mean, you notice Jerry Ryan in the trailer. I mean, she doesn't really act like 7 of 9 did on Voyager.
Well, she's been close enough to human for 20 years now.
She's acting like some old Western cowboy. Like, what are you doing out here, Picard?
No, she's still keeping it together, and she's got to be in 50s now.
Oh yeah, I do like acknowledgement of Voyager. That's nice. It's kind of like acknowledging the Ewoks at the end of the Star Wars movie.
They even brought back. They've shown in the trailer. They even brought back Hugh.
Yeah.
The
I saw
guy
as part of the cast. But he wasn't in this episode. Yeah, this episode.
No, he wasn't. No.
At least, well, with this episode, they're kind of like easing into the story a little bit, but there was some running around. But at least it started off slow. I want to get like deep nerd here. Okay, there's a guy that I recognized, but I couldn't place him.
It was at the end. It was the British guy that was talking to the other daughter,
the Romulan dude with the British accent.
Yeah, and he's a twin of. There's 2 brothers named Treadaway, and one of them was actually in a series that ran for 1 season. And it had both him and a very young Tom Hardy to kind of go into Nemesis if you want to twist it around. But I remember it was a show where it's like these people in England and they lived in some sort of parallel reality in like a closed universe or something. It was kind of this weird
show.
I
know what you're talking about. Yeah, he was probably in that show. I can't tell you the name of it, unfortunately.
So what would you give it out of 10? What would you give it?
Out of 10, I'd probably give it maybe I don't know. I'd probably give it a 7.
I'd give it an 8. I saw some reviews. They literally like jizzed themselves over it and gave it like 10s out of 10s and
some
loved
of them,
it.
Yeah, and then I read a lot of bad articles.
But it's good. It's really good. It hit me exactly where it needed to hit me, but it didn't. I was like, damn, this is actually really good.
It was. But the reason for that was Patrick Stewart.
Yes,
that's the only reason, really, to watch the show is for Patrick Stewart.
So you're saying if they did Star Trek Riker, you wouldn't be as excited?
Well, I mean, they wouldn't ask Riker to do a show, and they wouldn't. I'm really surprised that Geordie's not involved in any way, or LeVar Burton rather, because Geordie was.
You say he won't be. Look, don't.
But the thing is, to not make him the center of anything involving Data, because on the show, and I don't think they know this, that Geordie was Data's best friend. Not Picard. Picard was his champion. Picard was his legal counsel, that kind of a thing.
There it sits.
If you want to take like a star from that show, I guess it would be Picard. But the thing is, there were no stars on Next Generation. Next Generation was ensemble. It was not, William Shatner, Kirk with his chest out, kind of thing that the original Star Trek was before Spock became the breakout star of that show.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, like, originally it was just going to be Kirk and his crew, and then it became Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, this thing.
Well, you could almost say that it was kind of the Data show, too, because they always gave him something to do, and he always stood out. He was kind of the Spock, really. He was always trying to kind of learn how to be human.
Yeah. But here we've got, Picard, I guess, for the purposes of their show, being Data's friend, being severely impacted by Data's death at the end of Nemesis, which was also kind of a variation on Spock's death in Star Trek II.
Yes, although I'd say, like, if you ever see the second Star Trek Into Darkness, they do a riff on Khan, and they do a riff on
Benedict Cumberbatch.
Somebody sacrificing themselves. And I think it would probably like give you like full nerd Hulk rage, and you might just like literally like pick up the Blu-ray player and throw it across the room.
Yeah, well, we'll see. I mean, like if you start seeing Blu-ray players falling out of the sky and hitting the ground, we'll know.
Blu-ray players falling from the sky.
That's pretty good.